Hey YouTube, TechSparrow here with another simple API example video. Today we're going to be looking at Bungie's Destiny. I know that's a video game, but apparently they got an API, and I'm going to show you how to make a call to it. And for this example, we're going to be using the Python programming language and the requests-oauthlib package, which is an extension of the requests library. Without further ado, let's get going. First thing we're going to need is an account with Bungie, and seeing as this is a video game, it looks like they didn't want to duplicate the account and sign-on process, so they actually just use whichever platform you're using to play the game as your login to the Bungie system. So since I was most familiar with the Xbox, that's the one I went with. Go to this registration site and you'll be able to sign in or create an account, join up. I've already done that. Don't think I need to go through all that stuff. Everybody creates accounts online. So, but anyways, this is what your dashboard will look like when you're all signed in. Now the next step is registering our application with Bungie. So to do that, I'm going to leave this link in the description of this video here. But it is a post here where they were introducing the API. If you scroll down here a little ways, you can see they have this list here. Oh, looks like it's misnumbered. But anyways, this link here is where we're trying to go. It says it's where you want to request an API key, which is basically part of registering the app as well. So when you click that, it'll bring you to this page here. You can see I've already created one example app here. We'll do another one. We'll call this TechSparrow Programs example, right? The website, I think this does come up somewhere, so we're going to go ahead and just put in my little static TechSparrow Programs page, programs.github. And this will also act as my redirect. Not this form, not this field here, but down here you can see the redirect URL. Okay, so I'm kind of skipping around. Sorry about that. The OAuth client type here. So in this example, we're making what they call in the OAuth world, it's like a profile, and we're using the web application profile. So we're going to use the confidential OAuth client type. So I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail, but it's good to know how the process changed depending on what kind of application you're building. So it's a little bit different if you do it for mobile and desktop and so on and so forth. But my examples are primarily this web application profile. It's just really simple to do. So once you select that, you give yourself, put down your redirect URL. And let's see here, we need to select a scope. We always want to do the principle of least privilege here. And I believe for the example, this is the only one we need here. So this looks like a read permission on information related to your current player. We're not going to need an origin header. We're going to agree and abide by the terms of use, of course. And we're going to go ahead and create. There we go. Here's all the good stuff, right? We have an API key. Look at that. They're giving us the authorization URL. We don't have to go digging around in the docs for it. They give us a client ID and our secret. So, okay, and then here are the settings that they allow us to change later if we need. Great. Okay, so I appreciate your patience, but there are two more pieces of information we need before we can get to the coding part. Again, this is another one of those links that will be in the video description. But this is basically documentation on Bungie's OAuth 2 kind of process, right? And we got the authorization endpoint in our app. They gave it to us. But I'm guessing because not all your calls require a token, they don't bother giving you the token endpoint. So you got to go get that. So go ahead and go to this link here, copy this, and put it down into your notes. The last thing that we need is a protected resource. So again, this is another link that'll be in the description. This is the community maintain version, I believe, of the all the endpoints that you can use. And we're just going to take a very simple one here, get current Bungie net user. So it's like profile name and stuff like that. So go ahead and copy that down and put it into your notes. Now the fun can begin. So let's get our workspace set up with a fresh project directory. We'll give it the name Simple API okay, am I typing in some help today? Destiny. Inside that project directory, we want to add a couple of files. We'll start with the .env file, the .getignore file, and our run file, Simple API destiny.py. There, great. Now in the getignore, we want to ignore our environment file and also our virtual environment directory. We'll set that up in this next step here. So now we can open up a current terminal. Let's check our present working directory. Okay, let's cd into our project directory and create that virtual environment directory. So to do that, it's Python 3-m venv and then venv again. And you see inside our project, we have that directory. But before we start installing things, we need to turn it on. We need to turn the virtual environment on. So to do that, you use the command source, and then you give it the path to the activate script. There you go. Now you can see that our terminal prompt is prepended with the venv. It means we are good to go. So then we're going to use pip to make our installations. pip3 install. We need a couple of libraries here. requests-oauthlib, and then to help us with protecting our secrets, we're going to use python -.env. Okay, looks like everything installed successfully, so let me clear this screen and then we'll get to coding now. Before we get to the run file, let's do a few things in our environment. You know what, let's bring this terminal down first. Let's grab our environment our env file here and fill it out with all our secrets so that we don't have to go back and forth. So we'll have a client ID. We'll also put our client secret in here. And Bungie's API actually requires an API key as well. So we have got those. Let's go back to our app landing page here and grab these information. So here's an API key. And here's our ID. And here's our secret. Oops. There we go. Okay, so the env file is set up. I believe we'll be able to just work into the run file now. Okay, so now I've opened up the run file here and gave myself a little bit more room. So let's start by importing our requests-oauthlib. Specifically, we need the OAuth2 session object. So with the regular request library, you have to do a lot of things by hand when you're building your request. And this object will abstract a lot of that stuff away from us. So we just have to call a few methods and pass in some variables, and it makes the job a lot easier and simple. Since we're protecting our secrets with environment variables, we need to do import the .env method to load our environment variables into our program. And we're also going to need the OS library. Okay, so the way that this run file is going to be structured is the first part's just collecting all the environments that are necessary to make the program work. Then we're going to do the second part, which is actually running the program, you know, doing all the steps. And then the final piece will be just printing our results to the console. So let's call the load.env method to load all our environment variables and start setting up our app-related variables. So the first one will be our API key. And then using the OS library, we can get our environment variables. Get. And then we identify the key for the value that we're looking for. In this case, it's API key. Then we have a client ID that we're going to be needing. Same thing. And then for the last one, it is a client secret. And that'll be the last one here. Great. So now we need all the endpoints. So the sequence of events that need to happen is our user needs to go to Bungie and verify their identity and accept the scope that we're requesting. After that, the user gets redirected to our redirect URL, but that URL will have some query parameters attached to them, one of them being code. And that code parameter is what we use to send another API call to Bungie and exchange that code for a token. And then with that token, we'll load that token into our session variable, and then we'll be able to make API calls to the protected resources. So let's start with the authentication link, or well, the authentication URL, I'm sorry. Now this comes from documentation. We can go to our app landing page, and it's listed right here. A little bit of white space at the end there. And then we need to identify our redirect URL. And for this example, I'm just using a very simple GitHub Pages website that I created. Honestly, this can be anything as long as it's HTTPS, but I find that this works well for my examples. There we go. That will, after successfully authenticating, that will contain our code. So we need to know where to go exchange that. That'll be the token URL. That's not on our app page here, but there is another page here with the OAuth documentation for Bungie. And that would be this one here. Again, this will be in the description. And then we need some sort of protected resource to make our API call with. So we'll call this get user details. And well, let's actually call it an endpoint to be more specific. And that page I showed earlier, the list of endpoints. Here, I've actually pulled it up here and queued it up for myself. But you'll just grab the request URL here. There we go. Okay, so I think we have all the pieces that we need to get started now. So let's create our session. Invoke the OAuth2 session constructor, and we pass it our client ID. And it's also going to need our redirect URL. Okay, now that we have our session, we're going to prepare our link. So we're basically going to do this all inside the terminal. So we'll just print the OAuth link to get, to have the user verify their identity and accept the scope. So the session variable can help us with that. So we'll create the link by calling the session.authorization URL. And I believe all we need to do is pass our auth URL. Yeah. That's it. Yep. Oh, I see it. You can also pass it state and some other things too, but this is a very simple example, and this is the bare minimum that you need. Obviously, if you take this and move forward with it, you're going to have to take into consideration some of the security features that you need to put into place. But again, simple example, we'll just do the bare minimum. Right, now we need to print this to the console, so print an F string here. It's auth link. And that authorization URL method actually returns a tuple, and the link that we need is the very first element. So go ahead and dig into that. And then if that process is completed successfully, we need some place to store the response. So we'll call this the redirect response. And we'll just paste it right into the console, because we're going to manually take that redirect URL with the query parameters in it and just paste it into the console. We'll make it an F string here. Oh, actually, we don't need to make it an F string. Paste your redirect URL with query params here. Now, as I said before, there'll be one of the params will be a code. So we need to parse that URL, take that code and exchange it for a token. Again, the session, our session can help us with that. So it has a method called fetch token. We're going to pass it a couple of things here. So to set it up, we need ID. Set that equal to our client ID. We also need our client secret. Set that equal to our client secret. And then we need to know where to go. So give it the token URL. And then it needs the authorization response to parse. So that's our redirect response. Great. So if this method returns, is completed successfully, our session object will now have a token inside of it. So any sort of request we make after this, if a token is required, it will automatically include it into the request. Now, there's actually one other thing that is unique to this. Well, I wouldn't say unique, but part of the contract that Bungie is enforcing for their MPI, and that's using the API key. So the API key basically needs to be attached to any and all requests made, or they'll just flat out reject it. It's probably one of the first things they check. So since that's not part of the fetching token or the constructor for the session, we're going to go ahead and create another variable here called additional headers. And it's a dictionary of key value pairs. And the key is capital X dash API, well, underscore dash, and capital key. And then we set that to our environment variable, get env API key. There we go. So now we have the additional headers required to make our request. So let's actually save our request in a response. And we'll use the get method. So we're going to make a get request to this URL. What did I call it again? Oh yeah, get user details endpoint. And then also the additional headers. Great. So that should be that as far as the program goes. Now we should go ahead and print the response so we can see what happened, right? So let's do an F string here, and we'll call this response status. So let's find out if we had a 200 code. Response has an attribute called status code. And let's see, says reason. In case there's an error, we want to know a little bit more than just a number. And let's actually print the results now. Response text, we'll call it. Response text. And then let's see, let's make one little new line there just to kind of separate it. Great. So that basically concludes our run file here. So we're ready to run the program now. Wow. I've made a little bit more room here in the terminal. Confirm your location. Yep. Then we call Python and then invoke this our run file. As you can see, it's printed out our auth link here, and it's already waiting for our input. So let's go ahead and follow this link and authenticate. There it is, showing the app name, who we're signed in as, and what scopes we're being asked to approve. So we go ahead and approve that, and we should be redirected to our static website here. And as you can see here, this is the redirect URL, but it also has code and state attached to it. So the way we wrote our program, we take the whole thing, copy it, come back to our terminal, and then paste that in here. And that should do the fetching of the token. And then at the end of the program, we make that get request. So let's see what happens. Well, that's good. We got a 200, so that's successful. The reason's okay. And then here's our response. So we asked for the user details, membership ID, the name, display name. Great. So I've had a successful run. This concludes the simple API example video for Destiny. I had a lot of fun making this one. I mean, especially so I've never connected to an API related to a video game, and seeing how extensive those endpoints are, I'm pretty sure some people can make some pretty exciting things with this. So have at it. Hope everything works out well for you. And I hope you found this educational and enjoyable to watch. And greatly appreciate any likes or subs. Again, you got any APIs that you'd like me to take a look at and take a crack at, put them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get around to them. All right, see you next time, YouTube.